All right, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us for the session on the 4-hour work week. As you get started, or as you get settled, here are a few reminders. Please use the Q&A section for questions today, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenters and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. AIA California will submit one AIA learning unit for those who complete the session live. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online shortly after the session. Today's session, which will focus on innovative strategies and tools to revolutionize work habits, is brought to you by BQE. It qualifies again for one AIA learning unit for those who are watching live. AIA California will be reporting those units for you once you have finished the session in full. Now to quickly introduce our presenter. As a distinguished thought leader, Steve blends his passion for design and firm management with profound insights into emerging technologies. Over the past 2 decades, working directly with over 1,400 firm owners, Steve has significantly contributed to reshaping these businesses for enhanced growth and sustainability. Steve's career highlights include a 7-year tenure at SLM Chicago, founding BBA Architects in 1993 and growing it to a 17 architect firm before its 2007 sale, and creating Arca Office, which is a groundbreaking project management software company that was acquired by BQE Software in 2010. Recognized for his significant impact on the profession, in 2009, Steve was elevated to the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects. Currently, as a founder of the Well-Designed Firm, he focuses on leading AE firms to operational excellence, mentoring leaders to craft businesses as elegant and innovative as the architecture they create. Thank you so much for being here today, Steve. Please take it away.
Great, Rebecca, thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, which I guess is right here. And hopefully you can all see that. And again, thank you all for attending today. It's a gorgeous day here in Los Angeles, and I like to be outside, but we'll take care of this in 4 minutes. No, we're gonna take a good hour. I'll stick around as long as we can if you have questions, and I really do appreciate the hard questions. It's one of my favorite things about doing these kinds of webinars. But I do have a lot to cover, and I do want to leave enough time for the Q&A. But before we dive in, I just want you to indulge me for just a minute or two while I explain why I'm actually presenting to you today. So a little over a year ago, after selling my third company, I decided really the next chapter of my life would involve sharing so much of what I've learned over these 4 decades now in the AE industry, both as a practicing architect and also as what Rebecca mentioned, as a software entrepreneur, where our software was serving over 4,000 AE firms. And frankly, it's in that capacity where I had personal engagement with more than 1,400 firm owners that that I've really learned so much. Now, as a business coach, I work directly with firm owners and some of their key staff. Some of you might be in attendance today. I've become really now acutely aware that a lot of firms are just incapable of crossing the chasm, if you will, to find that balance between serving the needs of our clients while at the same time building a sustainable and a valuable business, a business that's actually not there just to serve the owner's lifestyle goals, but creates a lasting legacy or has some lasting value. And if any of you are interested in learning more about how to make your business as elegant as your architecture, I do invite you to visit me, not now, but after today's webinar at thewelldesignedfirm.com. And there's some contact information at the very end that I'll be having up as a slide. You can also go to my website and sign up for a free 30-minute Zoom meeting with me where we can just kind of talk about what's going on at your practice and see if I can help bring some value to that operation. Now, my objective today is going to be twofold. I'm going to share my thoughts regarding ways to reduce your workload and spend more time doing what you love. After that, I'm also going to ask you, I'm going to beseech you, please sign up for a demo to learn about the technology solution offered by today's sponsor, which is BQE Software. I know they have these magnificent tools which can help you achieve the goal of finding total joy in your profession, and achieving that sort of work life or life work balance that we should all enjoy, we all deserve. So 17 years ago, Tim Ferriss wrote the famous book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And not surprisingly, this book was received both with some skepticism and also some enthusiasm. And regardless of which side of that coin you are on, the book did spend about 4 years on the New York Times bestseller list. It sold over 2 million copies. It was translated into 40 languages. So this notion, at least of working less, it appeals to everybody. The fact that you are all here today, attending a webinar with this title is a testament to that fact that this is a subject that really resonates with you. Now, perhaps some of you have read the book. I've read quite a few of these sort of self-help books. They are momentarily inspiring. There's these motivational speakers out there that are captivating and they're very stimulating. But the problem is always taking the lessons that are learned and then implementing change in our lives so we can do better or we can be better. And I understand change is very hard. My webinar last quarter was about these atomic habits, stealing another book title. They're just very hard. Building habits that can act change are the things we all are all hoping to be able to do. So we're going to hopefully modify our behavior so that some new good habits can take root. And the ideas that we take away from today's webinar would be that you implement just a few changes in our behavior, some new habits, and then we'll be able to have those goals that we all dream about. They can become manifest. I'm also going to confess during this presentation, I'm not going to give you some quick recipe to suddenly alter your life so that you can play 2 rounds of golf every day, maybe call into the office occasionally to check in. And I'm actually not sure that any of you really want to do that either. I just hope to demonstrate that by changing your habits, changing your work process, how you think about your firm, these are things that will be able to free you up from feeling like you're drowning in work or occupied with the kinds of work that you really don't enjoy. So please indulge me for a moment to maybe humble brag, but much to my wife's dismay, I can be found in front of a computer no less than 4 hours, or certainly typically more than 8 hours every single day, but only a fraction of my time is actually spent doing, quote unquote work. I'm going to talk more about this when we get into how one fills the void when 90% of your work week is eliminated. Uh, Now, the artwork that you could see on the slide here on Tim's book, it shows a person hanging out on a hammock suspended between, two palm trees. And as we are going to soon discuss, I don't think that is really what any of you want to do here today. If someone was to gift you with 36 extra hours, you're not going to just waste those hours. So it's really about what do you do? How do you fill the void when you are becoming, you found a way to be more efficient with your time? Now, recently, I was actually listening to a podcast just a couple of weeks ago about a new movement that, interestingly enough, it's attracting a lot of the Gen Z cohort, and it's called FIRE. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And that is not what we're going to be talking about today. That's actually a movement, I think, that's directed at non-professionals. I think almost all of you today are most likely highly educated individuals who love practicing your profession. You aren't looking to retire so much as to fill your days with joy, the joy you always imagined that this craft would be able to provide for us. And in fact, as we all know, most architects don't reach their stride until they are at the sort of retirement age for the rest of the general public. But as soon as this craft of architecture became real, as soon as it became a business, that's when all the joy was sucked out. After all, you are now responsible for keeping the business operating, paying your bills, paying the employees, scavenging for another project to help feed the beast. And as the adult in the room, you hardly have time to participate in the creative enterprise, to do the things that actually inspired you to join the profession in the first place. And where we once might have said things like, I wish that, I need more time, or I wish there were more hours in the day. I'm going to try and help you flip that upside down or inside out, reorient ourselves with what constitutes work, how work gets done, and also how we perceive time. We're going to have plenty of time when you do this right to play once again. Now, as Tim Ferriss defines it, there's actually four main areas that you need to consider when you try to achieve the 4-hour work week. They are definition elimination, automation, and then liberation. We're going to have to spend a few minutes delving into each of those in the next few slides here. But once you can define what you want out of life, what constitutes work, that's when you can start this process of elimination, getting rid of the things that don't fit in, even when those things are actually going to be essential for your business. And after that, we're going to examine how automation is crucial to realizing a 4-hour work week. And once you implement automation technologies, that's when you're going to be liberated to pursue your goals. Now, before I do this, let's first explain the obvious. Why do we need the work-life balance? And to do this, I am going to speak from some personal experience. After completing my graduate studies, I moved to Chicago to work for a preeminent international architectural firm. I was working 90-hour weeks, and it was one of the happiest times in my life. This is not uncommon when you are young, single, and frankly, you are grateful that you finally completed your academic studies and you can dive into the swimming pool and start swimming and getting paid real money for what you used to pay money to do while you were in school. Now, I was fortunate. I did have the luxury of working for a large firm. It had at the time 50 years of experience behind it. They had developed phenomenal processes. They were providing meaningful mentorship. And that enabled me to continue to learn about my new profession while making my work joyful. And I know not all of us might maybe are so lucky, but that's what the first 7 years of my young professional life looked like. And when I would have some concerned family members warn me, that this is a lifestyle that is just not sustainable, that I'm going to eventually burn out. I would laugh in their faces. I do remember going home reluctantly at 11 p.m. most nights. Burnout was not on my radar. I was like the kid whose parents would have to physically drag him from the playground into the house for dinner every night. But everything changed like overnight. Once once I was married and we were preparing to start a family, and I kind of realized I had survived the wave of layoffs after that October stock market collapse in 1987. But I realized that I might not be so lucky the next time. So my wife and I had that important discussion. We decided that if I wanted to control my future, that I had to start my own firm. But I was not smart enough to know what I know today. So, like so many before me, I just opened an office. Now, within a year, we had 5 employees. We're bringing more employees on as quickly as we possibly could. Times were good at that moment, but guess what? I hated my life. I wasn't having fun anymore. And to me, owning a firm, being responsible for a business and for clients, it had sucked all the joy out of being an architect. I was now the adult in the room. When I worked at SOM, I had the luxury of having being surrounded by adults, and I was just a kid in a sandbox. Now, you have to be honest about what defines a happy, fulfilling life. So once I stopped and I did that exercise, and this was frankly long before Tim Ferriss ever wrote this book, I completed the first requirement for attempting a 4-hour work week. I had a very clear picture of what work I wanted to do to achieve personal happiness, and better yet, what work I had been doing that did not bring personal happiness, but it was actually necessary for the sustainability of my business. So I was finally on my way to regaining control, which leads us to that next step, elimination. So I had done that first step, defining what it is. What is it that gives you joy? What is it that is the work that needs to be done? What is it the work that you don't want to do? Now, before I take you through this next step of elimination, Rebecca, we're going to launch our first poll question. I have only 2 poll questions for you. Hopefully, it'll keep you awake and engaged. But I'd like to know from the group here today, how many hours per week do you work on the average? So, what are you one of those folks who's working less than 24 hours a week? Less than 40 hours a week? Do you put in between 40 and 50 hours? Are you working between 50 and 60 hours? Or are you one of the folks like I was, working more than 60? I was doing regular 90-hour weeks. So let's, Rebecca, I think you can probably see the progress of the results. When you feel that we have slowed down in the returns on the polling, let's go ahead and share that with everybody as soon as we're done here. Okay, so 3% of you, very small group, are working more than 60-hour weeks. A little less than 10% are working less than 24. Uh, Maybe about 25 of you in total are working less than 40, but the 40 to 50 group is the largest cohort. Most of you work a minimum of 40 hours a week, and some of 12% of you are working more than 50 hours. So this is great. Just keep in mind, the overwhelming majority of you are working more than 40 hours, and actually closer to 75% of you are working more than 40 hours and up to 60. So great, or more than 60. So let's close that. Now we're going to move on to that next step of elimination. This removes unnecessary tasks and those things that distract us, things that do not contribute to the goals that we had just defined in that first step. Okay. Now, Tim actually advocates for the 80-20 principle, which is the Pareto principle. I've talked about that many times in other kinds of webinars, which basically states 80% of results come from just 20% of the effort that you put in. So if you can identify and eliminate the 80% of your activities that are not contributing to your productivity, that's when you can free yourself up some time and energy for the things that truly matter to you. By the way, I don't know if I'm going to get to that slide today, but when you use the right technology, like our sponsor here today, one of the wonderful KPIs, one of the key performance indicators that we look at is a realization rate. A lot of firms look at utilization, which is, how much time do people spend working on projects? But realization rate really has to do with, is that time actually productive? Okay, like, does it generate revenue? And that's often more important than knowing people are just spinning their wheels. So when you follow the 80-20 rule, honestly, you will end up seeing that your creativity will improve, your stress levels will decrease, your love for your work is actually going to increase. And that becomes sort of the ironic thing about it is, as you love your work more, why would you want to work less at it? So I'm trying to tell you that your work doesn't change, but let's just say that 36 hours out of that week, if you're going to just work a 40-hour week, are doing the things you love. In a couple of minutes, I'm also going to share a personal story of how I implemented the 80-20 rule to an amazing effect. One exciting thing about this phase of elimination is the correlation between the notion of removing things from one's life and what are the corresponding benefits of that. So we're all looking at for ways to be more creative, and we often marvel at the wonderful imaginative things that children do, or the crazy things that children say. It's because they do it because they're unburdened. And as we get older, life seems to weigh us down, and every one of those weights seems to crush our ability to flourish creatively. So if you can shed some of that weight, we're going to allow more opportunities for us to become more creative. Now, it is no mystery to me that uh, we reduce our stress by eliminating our responsibilities. So if you do feel stressed, how do you mitigate it? I find a lot of the stress that we take on is actually unfounded, and it's about our perception of the particular situation. Maybe you feel you have to manage the burden alone, but whenever it's possible, I do urge you, please share your stress or articulate it to someone. And very often, that just eliminating a portion of the burden could be enough. Not everything has to be 100% eliminated. Sharing is always sharing isn't always about sharing just positive things. Sometimes we also need to share the stressful things. But as you start to talk to people about those things that are very stressful to you, just that dialogue that comes from that can help you change your perspective about how truly significant that is. Is that really, does it merit a sleepless night? Lastly, I do want to reiterate the notion of job satisfaction. When we do the things we love, we tend to do them well. Eliminating unnecessary things, that opens us to the opportunity to do more of what we love. And we enter this feedback loop, which leads to greater job satisfaction. Now, if you have heard me talk before, you do know I often refer to the notion of leverage. And we have a number of levers that are available to us in our lives and in our businesses. Still, the one ubiquitous lever every firm can deploy is using smart technology in your firm's operations. Nearly all of you are intimately familiar with the benefits of CAD or BIM software to help you design and produce your deliverables. This is technology that's leveraging the work for you. The most efficient, the most profitable firms, they've invested money, and more importantly, they've invested the time, typically through training, to exploit these tools brilliantly. For any of you who do have CAD and BIM technology that you are not trained on, I can promise you, just investing some time into learning how to use that tool well will have enormous benefits. But design and production are just a single slice of a pie that comprises your firm. There are similarly brilliant technologies that you can leverage for project management, accounting, time and billing, and human resources, client relationship management. And I have in the past spoken endlessly on these topics. And I remind you, again, invest the money and time to leverage these tools as they not only aid in your efficiency and your profitability, but they're going to allow you to minimize your workload while at the same time provides more clarity, which allows you to make much faster, smarter decisions. In addition, when you have the right technology, everyone on your team can see what is required for success. Task management, it should be a staple in every firm where everybody on the team understands what are their responsibilities and they could see the problems occurring in real time. And I'm going to go off script here and mention an aspect of technology that I wish every firm would adopt. I am speaking about transparency. When you deal with business and project management software applications, they generally all can provide you with the security settings that give the administrators or the firm owners control over what data is being shared with which people in your firm. And I am always impressed with the firms that have the greatest transparency. There is an absolute correlation which shows those are the firms that are performing the highest or nearly all of the KPIs. They have the greatest employee retention, they have the greatest employee satisfaction, they have the highest profitability and client satisfaction ratings. This is why I am a proponent of firms that use technology, like again, today, the ones provided by today's sponsor. Please open your staff's permissions to see deep into your business and your project performance metrics so that they feel like they are being respected team members. Any of you who disagree with me on that, I look forward to you contacting me offline or maybe during the Q&A and challenge me on this. I do want to return to the current theme of eliminating unessential and undesirable work from your plate so you can free up time and make space for the things that really matter to you. So the first thing you need to understand is, how do you spend your time? And that is why I'm strongly advocating keeping a detailed time card with a very granular list of activities. I know that's going to make a lot of you groan. But once you have a very clear picture of your time usage, that's how you can begin eliminating tasks or activities that just don't align with your goals or are just simply unproductive. You're going to soon realize that you would have been just fine, not even engaging in some of these unproductive tasks. So it begs the question, what does unproductive mean? So I look at everything as a matter of a return on an investment, the ROI. It's another reason why technologies become important, because when you can track your time, you know how much does that time cost, and then you can track the effort to see if it actually brought you any return. So let's just say you spend 40 hours in the first quarter of this year working on updating your website. And of course, there's going to be some additional costs when you do something like that, but I'm really only going to be interested in your time right now. And in addition to that, let's say that every hour of your time, make the math easy for me, costs $100. So you spent 40 hours, which is $4,000, and you spent that in Q1 of this year. Now let's take a look at your website analytics. Has there actually been an uptick of visitors who are visiting the pages that you might have worked on? Has there been an uptick in requests for proposals or any change in prospect and client behavior based on that 40 hours or that $4,000 that you spent? Now, in most cases, not always, the answer is going to be absolutely no. So let's give it another quarter while maybe you're doing some social media efforts that might be driving visitors to your website. Let's see if that has an impact. And if the answer is still no, please consider this is unproductive work. You think it's essential. You had a team meeting. You all decided, you and your partners, we need to do something, but it ended up not. I was about going back to that realization rate I was talking about. Did you get a return on that investment? Another aspect of elimination is learning to say no to some commitments and requests that are not serving your primary objectives. Now, of course, in business, you first look to your firm's mission and vision and goals, which is what I always do when I start with my clients, is we do start with the strategic plan. That's the foundations of this. What's the firm's mission and vision? What are your goals for this year and coming years? And when anything that starts tugging at your sleeves for your attention that does not align, it's please don't waste your time. Let them go by de facto. If it doesn't serve the mission and the vision or the goals that we've set forth, don't waste your time on it at all. If you just follow that rule, I look forward to receiving a thank you note from you later. And the last thing I need to talk about concerning the process of elimination is to be better at delegation. Delegating tasks, when you do it correctly, it will benefit both parties. So the employee for whom you delegate work, they welcome the trust that you place in them if you do it right. And it's especially true when the work you're asking them to do is pushing them beyond their current skill set. These help build relationships. It contributes to your staff's retention. And of course, you do have to carefully consider who to delegate the work to, because it can also backfire if you've assigned it to the wrong employees. The other benefit will come to you, of course. You've lightened your load, taking a task that isn't serving your goals, and it's freeing you up, giving you more time to replace it with something that does. So it's a win-win situation. Now, Tim Ferriss, he has got a story about a guy he met who talked about spending the whole day mowing his lawn. And I'm going to guess he had a very substantial property because it takes me about 30 minutes. But if I ever felt it was a good use of my time, maybe I would, this guy might have thought it was. But Tim asked him, like, you could probably hire a teenager to cut your lawn for $50. But the guy spent the whole day, or at least many hours working on it. So the bottom line is really, what is your time worth and what constitutes work? Clearly, this man considered maybe riding on a lawnmower on some big property of his was actually very peaceful time, and that's what he preferred to be doing. So it leads to the third area in Tim's framework to help you design a more efficient or a more fulfilling life. And this is my favorite topic. It is automation. And that is where technology, once again, enters our picture. Still, unlike time tracking, which helps us create a high resolution image of our past, automation can create a much better future. When we think about automation, we discuss leveraging technology or leveraging our systems to handle repetitive, time-consuming, mundane tasks. In other words, processes that can run on autopilot, reducing the need for constant human intervention. Now, Ferris actually emphasizes the importance of outsourcing and delegating tasks to virtual assistants. And I don't think at the time the automation world and technology was as it is today. This was 17 years ago, or automation tools. But when you do this delegating of tasks through automation, you have really two primary considerations. First, identify the tasks that actually can be automated, or in his case, outsourced, and then implement the tools, or in this case, the software that can help you streamline your operations. Now, Ferris also talks about delegating responsibilities to other people as part of automation, but I consider that actually part of the elimination framework that I spoke about earlier. I am a purist when it comes to automation and with technology. And simply because I delegate work to other people, it isn't going to guarantee that I can rely on that individual to actually execute the work correctly. And as a technologist, when I'm going to refer to automation, it is 100% technology based, and I'm going to rely 100% on the results. So let's first consider how we identify tasks that can be automated. This is actually a green field or a blue sky exercise for most of you. And I can generally talk about this single topic for hours, as nearly everything we do has automation potential. So the first is these scheduled and automated reports. And again, as I mentioned earlier, having worked with over 1,400 firm owners over the past couple of decades, I can tell you there is a colossal amount of time that's being wasted creating reports. And 95% of all reports are easily automated because they involve just a regular data crunching and a review for analysis or sort of decision making. A lot of firms shrug off that effort. They don't think it's important because that burden is being typically managed by an overhead employee. Now, efficiency usually becomes essential when a technical employee, if you will, when their utilization rate is going to be reduced. But if a non-technical person is working on the report, they don't seem to be too troubled by it. But consider the difference it would make to your firm's bottom line if you could reduce overhead tasks and free that non-technical or that administrative employee to focus their efforts on something that actually contributes to your bottom line. Maybe they can spend more time dealing with marketing efforts as opposed to manipulating some spreadsheet. When I work with my clients, report automation is the lowest hanging fruit and it yields the greatest results. So when you think about leverage, we're going to see maybe a one-time 5-minute investment paying dividends for years. So suppose your firm prepares 3 different reports every 2 weeks, bi-weekly reports, and another 3 reports every month, your P&L and your balance sheet, something like that. So if every single one of those reports requires 1 hour to gather the information, and I'm being very optimistic about that 1 hour, takes an hour to gather the information, prepare it for some visualization. That's 9 man hours every month. If you can automate that process, it means your firm is going to end up saving over 100 hours, 108 hours per year, or more than 2.5 man weeks. So imagine what could you do with 12 extra days added to your year. So next up is scheduled or automated invoicing. It's another area where firms are highly inefficient. The time spent every month to calculate and generate invoices, it is sobering. And again, when you have the right technology, you can schedule the invoicing cadence for each of your clients or each of your projects, and then have the software evaluate what's the contract value, what's the work in progress, what is our earned value, and it can generate these draft invoices for you automatically. And once they're prepared, the system will notify the appropriate reviewer in your firm for an approval. after which, by the way, that invoice can be automatically emailed to the client. So we analyzed the impact of automating invoices, and we determined what it used to take on average for a typical firm, 3 man days per month. It was reduced to 3 hours. And that is a savings of over 252 hours a year. That's another 6 man weeks of time being saved through automating, again, through technology. Then there's like automating accounting, which is really an adjacent task to the invoicing. It's a part of that. It's like bookkeeping. Most small firms, at least, will spend between 8 and 16 hours every month on accounting tasks. Implementing smart accounting software with electronic invoicing and payments can reduce that down to 2 to 4 hours. And that is a savings of somewhere between 48 hours and 144 hours every single year. And if you are going to you've been keeping score, these three automation technologies will save the average small firm 12 man weeks. Now, at a modest $25 per hour cost to a firm. That's assuming all of those hours are being put in by some very low paid, non-technical employee in the firm, admin type person. That's going to save the firm at least $12,000. That's the floor. I guess that's a digression too, because I really am not supposed to be talking about money, but you'll focus on the time. That equates to 400 to 500 hours saved. And that's about 20 or maybe 25% of one full-time employee's year. So these are just three things that I suggest you automate by leveraging proven technologies. But the list can actually go on and on. You have to stop, stand back and look at your life and your business and think about what is happening manually, what is sucking up valuable time that could be offloaded to technology. And if you have any difficulty seeing those opportunities, please contact me after the webinar. I'll be happy to help you work through some of those. Now, even though I did talk about delegation during the elimination stage, I'm going to return to it briefly since Ferris did include it in the automation process. Remember, I said I don't really like delegation as part of that. This is to the true technology system, not to people. Still, delegation is one of those functions that is critical for leadership. We all believe we can do the work better than anybody else, and we do want it done right. And that is what causes most of us to hesitate when we still should be delegating some tasks. We fear that the person is going to need some extra hand holding. It's going to just require more oversight than it's worth. So we just buckle down and we do that work ourselves. But as a firm leader, you cannot continue to think that way. Frankly, you should get to the point where everybody on your team is better than you anyway. Considering your job is secure, you shouldn't be threatened by that fact. It is precisely the qualifications of your team that creates so much value in your firm. So bring them to the table, let them eat, they will grow, and they're going to be grateful. And as an exercise, look at every team member, define what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. And then, of course, you're going to exploit their strengths, but you're going to mentor them to minimize their weaknesses. And if I think about all that you take away from today's webinar is this concept of delegating and mentoring, I think your time is going to be well spent. As with most things, one's perspective of any situation can lead to different feelings or certainly different results. It's going to be very important for you to not only delegate work, but also empower those to take ownership of those tasks that you delegate. And when you empower people, they will take greater pride in the work. That's going to bring them more joy. So be thoughtful when you present tasks to your staff so that they appreciate their importance in the project's overall success, how you're going to rely on them, and that you know that they can do a great job. This is part of the work of not just being a good boss, if you will, being a good mentor. Without this, I can actually promise you that you will be forced to pick up the pieces or fill in the gaps. when possible, please include these younger team members in these important meetings, spotlight them when the fruits of their efforts are being discussed. This goes an enormous way to their job satisfaction and their job retention. And it doesn't take away any delight from you. These are your people. Now, earlier I talked about the 80-20 rule, and I promised you that I would explain how I personally implemented it. Now, I have prepared somewhere in the vicinity of like 70 presentations like the one we're looking at today. I've done this over the last 16 years. And as you know, I track my time with great detail. So I can tell you that every one of the presentations that I do takes about 40 hours for me to create. About a quarter of my time is spent developing the general topic and the learning points. And after that, I'm going to write a detailed essay on the subject. Then I begin to create let's for lack of a better word, a PowerPoint presentation. It's based on the full vision of what I intend to present. And I often use this time to reconsider what are the aesthetics of my presentation templates, because I'm always looking to improve on whatever my previous template was. Um, the labor to design and build the slide deck, the slide deck, like the one that you're looking at today, you'll typically consume about half of my total time. I would sweat the details of every single slide, every image, every piece of text, every bullet point. And so this is contributing about 20 hours to build the deck. The last quarter of my time is spent building a 10 question quiz, which is so what some of you will see if you're not going to this live. I also write a blog article to accompany the webinar. So as an exercise in practicing what I preach, I deployed technology to automate, simplify, and frankly, in no small part, to create today's webinar. Now, hopefully, as all of you might be noodling around with the various AI technologies that have rolled out over the last year, you're really finding the benefit like I have. But a lot of it's still experimental, but they do in fact bring us some value. So that is what I did for today's webinar. I actually leveraged three different AI tools. So one up was ChatGPT, which I use certainly every single day, and I think suspect some of you are as well for a variety of purposes. I used Midjourney for imagery like you're seeing on the left half of that slide. I also used Prezi, which is a tool I had not used previously. Later, when maybe that there's a post-webinar survey that comes out, you can judge for yourself if this was a smart idea on my part. And if I see that the audience was dissatisfied with today's webinar, I'm going to know I might have probably outsourced more to technology than I should have. Anyway, rather than start it from scratch, building every single slide of the typically 30 to 40 slides that I normally do, I signed up for a trial account on Prezi, and I created about a 160 word prompt that was used to through Prezi's built-in AI to build a slide deck. It actually generated 24 slides. It did it in less than 2 minutes. And then I downloaded that deck and I imported it into PowerPoint. Actually, I imported it into Keynote, where I spent about an hour. I replaced the stock photography with AI images that I generated in Midjourney. I just don't like stock photography, so I thought, an hour should be fun to do that. I created screenshots using today's sponsors, project and business management software. Some of those came up just before here. And in addition, I did use ChatGPT to help flesh out some of the concepts, to improve or expand on some of my thoughts. And when I was all done with my detailed essay, I actually uploaded it into ChatGPT and asked it to create a 10 question multi-choice quiz, which is what you will see if you aren't watching this live. By the end of the process, I reduced my usual 40 hours to get this to 7.5 hours. So in less than one workday, I had a final PowerPoint presentation completed. I had done a dry run rehearsal. I created a 10 question quiz. I wrote that about a 1,600 word blog article. Usually that takes one full week. This took not even one full day. And interestingly enough, 40 hours reduced to 7.5 hours means I freed up about 80% of my time by embracing the latest technologies, but I didn't abdicate my responsibility to have pride of ownership or authorship. I was still in control. I was giving it my own spin, and I could probably maybe invest another hour or two refining some of these points, but I don't think it would yield enough of a result. It's not going to be a kind of return on investment that I would consider. So this is not perfect, and so be it. But contrary to what my wife might think, neither am I. So I guess it's probably a good enough webinar. So when you consider the 80-20 rule, you have to be cognizant of what are the high impact tasks. If you're like me, you might have a to-do list that is quite long. Many people create a hierarchy of tasks, listing them in what's the impact order. Maybe sometimes it's just for project completion, what needs to be done. So I might have a list that says I need a zoning and code analysis. That is critical for us to complete before we start plan sections and elevations, because I don't know what the site setbacks are, or the height restrictions are, on and on. But when you do this, you're actually on the right track. But of course, once again, technology can make this so much easier, because when you allocate tasks to your teammates, they're going to see them appear instantly in their to-do lists. They're going to be able to see them visibly on a Gantt chart, which brings all that workload into sort of a different dimension where time plays a critical role. So once again, delegate tasks like a leader and allocate the work so that your team is inspired and challenged, and use the technology that makes all of that happen. Now, Tim's final phase of the four we talk about at the beginning is liberation, the freedom to live and work on your terms. And that occurs when you can break free from a traditional 9 to 5 work structure and create a flexible lifestyle that allows you to work from anywhere and at times that are convenient to you. And liberation focuses on designing your work schedule to maximize flexibility and efficiency. So have you figured out how to work asynchronously with your team, or do you still need to be physically present in the office? And how productive are you while you're in the office? And how much time is spent commuting? And are you being productive during these commutes? So please explore opportunities for remote work or establishing a location independent business. And if you are genuinely expecting to achieve this 4-hour workweek lifestyle, you have to disengage yourself from a physical location. Frankly, when you think about what are the impacts of COVID-19, this is the one bright light that I do see. We needed to become flexible with remote work. And I know there's been a recent trend to bring everybody in your, whole team back into the office, but I would still encourage you, please find ways to make remote work part of the firm culture. The world is in fact headed in this direction. And as long as you fight against it, you will also be fighting against the thesis that we're talking about today. Okay, you have to break free of this. Tim actually recommends embracing this lifestyle, which prioritizes your experiences and your personal fulfillment over any material wealth. So it actually does open up a more maybe new age thinking about what are we doing with our firms and what do we consider to be profit. Okay, is profit always dollars? But what will you do when you reach the point where Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been met? And hopefully you don't simply go idle and live life like a perpetual spring break. When you get to this point in life, I hope you are comfortable enough to go outside of the me perspective and focus on things beyond you and even beyond your family, where you can leave a legacy. And what will your legacy be? And if you do not consider this now, you're going to be like so many people who end up reaching retirement age, whatever that is for an architect, and you realize they have nothing to fill the void when there's no longer a job to go to each day. Doesn't mean you don't do beneficial work, but you don't have to, right? So you might be able to impact education or focus on research projects that maybe have always intrigued you, but you've never had the time to do it. Maybe you can dip your toe into politics, get active with environmental change, or work directly with your community. But a purpose-driven life is more important than any single project that you get to work on. As I say, your firm is the greatest project you're going to get to ever work on, but a purpose-driven life is even more important than that. So that leads us to why you should put all of this effort into simplifying and maximizing your life to make your life more meaningful and valuable. The fundamental element that allows that to happen is time. So let's work to free up time and align our lives with our personal and our professional goals. So how will you fill the void that's left behind as you become ultimately efficient? Last thing I want to mention is if you expect to see change to achieve this better life work balance or even achieve a 4-hour work week, you must start measuring your progress. Every goal can be turned into a KPI. When you see your goals translated into data, that's when you can make some changes accordingly. And if all you have are these good intentions and you have no way to measure your progress, I can guarantee you, you will never achieve your goals. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Q&A. I still have a good 9 minutes or even more if Rebecca will allow us. But throughout the presentation, I have been illustrating my points by using today's sponsor, which is, thank you, BQE Software. I've been using their cloud platform called BQE Core. If any of you are not using BQE Core, please sign up here. There's a poll question that Rebecca will launch for you now. Please ask for a demo. I promise you that the time you spend looking at BQE Core, it will be time that is well spent. Over the last 4 decades, I have learned firms that implement smart technologies like BQE Core they're not only high performing, they use the time and the money that they save and they invest in building better firm cultures, paying their staff higher salaries, which by the way can attract better employees, and also it'll bring you better clients. I also ask you, please do your homework. Research what are the other software solutions out there. But if you're not using any firm or any project management program, frankly, even if you are using any of the other systems that are out there, please still sign up and get a demo of Core because you're going to be able to see the difference. And fortunately for us in the AE industry, there's only about 4 or so systems on the market that are actually purpose built for the AE industry. And you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the firm. Look into these technologies. And if you're not using anything, pick 3 systems to evaluate. Make sure BQE Core is one of those, and make sure that you get a demo of every one of these products. And you can ask them the hard questions and make sure it is the right fit and make sure it is a solution that will grow with you as your firm becomes more efficient and effective. You're going to want to have technology that has the ability to grow with you. And we'll just leave that poll question up there. And Rebecca or Courtney, if any of us have any questions, now is a great time. I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, we did have a few questions come through. The first one, this person, Eric, is asking regarding delegating. One of the challenges in a small firm of 3 to 4 people is that I have the principal empowering people to become more expert than me in things, graphic design, software, managing the details of projects and client communications. And stepping back, people will eventually wind up leaving the office. That leaves me in a worse bind without knowing all the skills and details that person was working on. Do you have any suggestions for, what this person's going through?
Okay, so the question I would have back, and hi, Eric. It's been a while since I've spoken to you. It's good to hear your voice. Um, is why are they leaving? Okay, so there's clearly something going on. Typically, when you ask people why they leave, it's usually the manager is the reason they leave. It isn't always, or it isn't typically the work that they're doing. So if people are being empowered, which is I think the word that you used, and they're developing these skills and then they leave, they are either not seeing future opportunities for them at the firm, which regardless of the size of your firm, every employee at every role needs to see uh, where can they grow within the firm. And if they don't see opportunities within the firm, it's either the way they're being managed or it's the fact that the firm doesn't provide enough. Yeah, maybe it's the type of work that they do. Uh, but if they don't see themselves as growing inside the firm, they have to go elsewhere. So, Eric, if you want to pursue that deeper, I'd love to speak with you offline.
Good advice. Thank you for the answer and thank you for the question. A few questions have come in asking if BQE would be a solution for a sole proprietor or a smaller firm. What would you say to that? I know this is the question we get a lot.
Yeah, no, this is a question I've encountered forever. And the way I like to look at it is, as I say, technology is one of the most fantastic levers any firm can ever have. And the fact is that probably everybody who's here today is using CAD and or BIM technology software, whether it is a sole proprietor or a firm with 4,000 employees. You're probably all using, in most cases, the same technology. You've just maybe used them slightly differently, but for the most part, you've all found value in technology. My belief is, yes, even a sole proprietor would benefit from having structure in place. Maybe a way to think about this is you could probably run a sole proprietor firm without any accounting software. Yeah, I don't know how you do it. Maybe you've got a spreadsheet. Maybe you've got a book and a pen, pen and paper. These are not ideal ways to do things, but when you start investing a little bit of money and some training into using a bona fide accounting software, and certainly BQE Core has accounting, but there's other accounting software platforms out there made for small businesses too. You get structure in your business, and once you get trained to use it, you start realizing, oh my God, what was I doing not having this ever? So as your firm grows, people will be like having the fact that you have processes in your company and technology in your company that makes those processes happen. So short answer would be absolutely, but set your objectives properly. Just like you might have BIM technology, you probably don't use all the BIM tools for a small residential renovation project. You have to decide what's of value to you. So if you're going to implement things like today's sponsor software today, I would simply say be very realistic about what you want out of it. Don't try and take on more than is you can really manage. And as your firm grows, then you might want to exploit some of the additional tools, but you don't have to exploit every single tool in that toolbox.
Hey, thank you for that. Good follow-up to that is someone just sent in, how do you determine what to spend on technology? A lot of programs we have found are very expensive and hard to know what the return on investment will be.
Okay, so what you don't want is what we used to refer to as shelfware, which is software that you think sounds great, and then you buy it or you subscribe to it, and you don't actually make it a part of your regular work, whether it's daily or weekly. So I would first do an audit of what are the technologies that are currently in your firm, and how often do we use them? Are we getting value out of those? And the response would be, if not, it's probably either it's because it hasn't been explained to the staff they haven't been trained to use it, or you genuinely, it was great at that moment and you bought it at the moment, but it just wasn't adopted. Uh, so you always want to monitor it. So look at your expenses, which is why I think it's really great. I would put 7% of our gross revenue a year towards technologies. That's a good KPI to remember. The average firm might spend 7%. That's the average towards your technology. If you're spending less than that, I think you should probably be investing more. If you're spending more than that, I'd start doing an audit to find out which of these things maybe aren't it's like the 80-20 rule. They're just not giving you enough in return for what you're spending on them.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have time for one more question, but we are close to the top of the hour. What are your thoughts on the importance of mentoring in a remote environment?
Well, it's more important. It's almost more important in a remote environment because out of sight is out of mind. And if you have staff working for you, even if they're contract workers, they're really not full employees. They um, they're just missing out on the human interaction. I would say they need to be spoken to every single day virtually. There's no excuse not to do that with technology, whether it's Zoom or similar types of technologies, Teams technology, things like that, where you could see each other's face. What's the facial expressions that they're using? Just talk about what's on their plate. And this used to be easy to do when everybody was in an office. It was almost impossible to avoid walking by someone's desk and maybe engaging with them. So it is far more important for managers to engage with their staff when they're remote more frequently than it used to be. And uh, I would say block your calendar to find a common time every day, first thing in the morning, maybe towards the end of the day before things wind down, just to talk to them one-on-one.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. We are at the top of the hour, so it is time to go. If we didn't get your question, you can see Steve's email right there. He's great at getting back to people, so feel free to reach out to him. And thank you to everyone that attended. And thank you, Steve, for the wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
All right, until next time.